Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our How to Do Research and Get Published webinar on partnering with your institution and utilizing library resources. We're excited to guide you through how you can leverage the full range of resources and support offered to you by your institutional library to enhance your research and your publication journey. Throughout the session, we'll be diving into the wealth of materials available through your library, from research tools to professional development resources. So let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce you to our team. Jesus Espinosa is the Student Success and Engagement Librarian at the University of Michigan. He provides information literacy instruction to first year and undergraduate students and works on student outreach efforts. He serves as the coordinator of the Peer Information Consulting Program, which offers peer research support services to students across campus. His research interests includes outreach in academic libraries, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and anti-oppression in libraries, as well as information literacy and social media. He holds a master's in library and information sciences from the University of Illinois, um, and a BA in English from the San Jose State University. Next, Colleen Molesky is the engagement librarian for the West at Sage. Previous to starting in this role, Colleen worked in academic libraries for 20 years with an emphasis on student success and instruction. She has expertise in linking critical pedagogy, universal design, social justice, and information systems. Her scholarship has been focused on utilizing her professional background and lived experiences to expand research and scholarship to be more inclusive and accessible for all researchers and learners. Next, Rhonda Contreras is the librarian and educator with a career devoted to connecting people and resources to support their need for research and learning. She earned her BA in secondary education and the MLIS from the University of Illinois and has led both public and academic libraries with a focus on research support and student success. Since joining SAGE in 2015, she has helped shape its engagement team, which partners with librarians and faculty to build strong collaborations and ensure institutions maximize their value of SAGE resources in teaching, learning, and research. And last, I'm Sean Scarsbrick, a senior marketing manager on the author marketing team, and my primary role is to provide support to authors and reviewers as they move through the publishing process. Today, as we talk, please send all of your questions to us through the Q&A box on your screen. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the call, and anything that we do not address live, we will follow up with in a blog post. And with that, I'm very happy to pass it over to Rhonda.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. So we'll kick off today. As you know, we're going to be talking about leveraging your library and the resources within and the people within that are there to partner with you. And as we all know, libraries are one of the most valuable, but sometimes under-recognized resources for advancing your research and publishing goals. They're filled with tools, with expertise, with people that are there to help you with every step of the research process. So before we jump in today, I really do want to encourage you to get to know your library, the website, its services, and especially the librarians that are behind it all. They are really true partners in the research process, collaborating across disciplines to advance scholarship and research. And with that in mind, we've organized today's session into four main areas. We're going to be talking about research services, partnership with librarians, opportunities to grow your own skills, and some of the more specialized support your library may have to offer. So to kick us off, I'm going to hand it over to Jesus.
Yes, thank you. So in our kind of conversations for session, we pulled this quote that we kind of felt really resonated with the theme and I think the intention of today's session. And that is like within our library spaces, we truly do see ourselves as like trying to reduce as many barriers as possible for our partners, for our students, for our faculty members, to gain access to the research and the resources and the services, the spaces that they need to best meet their needs, to help facilitate their work and really empower each and every folk that we partner with in their research process and in gaining access to whatever it is that they need. So we'll expand on some of these areas, but we strive to provide access to provide and facilitate access to materials, to building efficient and successful collaborations and partnerships, and to provide access to resources. And I always say we have a lot of expertise within our library spaces, but we don't know everything. But one thing that we do pride ourselves on knowing is how to make those connections. So if there's a resource or a service that we don't provide or don't have, we can help you and work with you to identify who the right person to go to, who the right department is, who the contact is, or what the service that we can connect you to is. So we really see ourselves as connectors um, in hopes of reducing barriers to anything that is needed in that research process. So moving into some of our research services. So first I'll just mainly talk about our consultations and reference work. So a big part of our day-to-day work is just meeting with our users and providing support in really any stage of the research process. This could be a introductory or like top level just scan of what are maybe some good databases or journals to look at if I'm doing research in this area. What would be some first steps in identifying potential maybe gaps in literature that I can like focus in a kind of like research proposal or as part of like a research agenda. So we do a lot of consultation even just in those early stages. And then going into some of the more kind of complex and depth in identifying resources, identifying very specific journals or places to look for information, as well as consulting with folks around maybe like what are additional resources that maybe the faculty member, like the research person, has not maybe considered. What are some alternative places that we can find additional sources? What are maybe specific tools for identifying funding or things like that? And I will kind of let Colleen go into finding and evaluating journals as well.
Thanks, Jesus. So, yeah, as Jesus was saying, there's so much work that's done on the consultation and reference side, and this can lead into understanding how to find and evaluate the journals that you either want to utilize for your research or that you want to publish in. And this is something that I think a lot of times people are not aware of the depth of knowledge that exists in libraries for that publishing part of your endeavor. And one thing that I want to make sure we point out too, as we're having this discussion, is that especially if you're working with an academic librarian, the majority of academic librarians are faculty as well, are having to publish, are having to conduct service and turn in their own portfolios and packets. And so, again, it's really a collaborative and partnership based field for us because we are doing this work and we're wanting to share how to do that work continuously. So, within the journal publishing landscape, it's important to understand that there are many ethical issues that you might want to make sure you're acknowledging as a researcher. So, for instance, maybe you want to publish open access, or perhaps you want to ensure you're publishing in a journal that has open peer review. Maybe, as I'm saying these things, you don't even know what I mean by this yet. And that's all okay. As Jesus was saying, librarians are there to assist with every stage of the research process. So if you are wanting to understand what journals meet your ethical and moral considerations, or maybe you're not even sure what that means yet, that is a really good chance for you to reach out to a librarian and start that conversation. Another thing that's important to understand when you are looking at finding and evaluating those journals and also understanding those ethical considerations is that there are journals out there that are called predatory publications. And essentially, those are publications that are purporting to be open access, but truly their only goal is to collect author fees. And they will target people, and sometimes you might even suspect, oh, this journal doesn't seem great. It doesn't look like this has been peer reviewed. So that's again something that librarians can help you to understand is really evaluating those information sources. Because I think a lot of times people think when I'm looking in a scholarly database, all I'm going to find is reputable sources. But the truth of the matter is, there are plenty of sources out there that are not reputable that are going to be in those resources as well. So these are all things that librarians can assist with, and they can assist you in finding those alternative publications that you might want to publish in. I have, for instance, worked with faculty members to find specific subject matter journals and then evaluate their peer review process to help make decisions around that. Many libraries will also have resources like research guides and courses that break this down as well. And more institutions also have critical scholarship librarians that can help you understand what you need to look for and what's best for you. So I'm going to punt it over to Rhonda to talk more about that funding and grant portion.
Thank you, Colleen. So I touched on this really briefly. Well, really the whole part of our conversation today is about librarians partnering with you in research and all of the different ways to do so. Jesus touched on this briefly in his bit when he was talking a little bit about funding and looking for that, and then Colleen talking a little bit about the expertise and the fact that librarians are often faculty going through research and publishing and all of this themselves as well. So because of that work that they're doing and because of the expertise built in that space, librarians can help you find and identify funding opportunities. They can help strengthen your grant proposals. They can embed their expertise directly into your research projects. They bring skills and data management, open access compliance, systematic reviews, a lot of the stuff that Colleen was just talking about as well. All areas where funders are increasingly expecting to see addressed when you're putting together your grant and funding proposals. So just, early collaboration is key. That's kind of something we say pretty regularly when we're talking to our colleagues across libraries, and can help you plan for resources like databases, digital tools, research workshops, and ensure those costs are built into your proposals. And another advantage is that partnering with your library helps create lasting impact. It helps create your legacy because the resources that are funded through the grants and proposals can be maintained and shared through the library. It extends that access to students, to your colleagues. And librarians can also further amplify your research through repositories, events, outreach events, helping, again, for you to meet that funder requirement around visibility and public engagement. And then, of course, beyond all of these specialized services that we just touched on so far, libraries continue to offer incredible ranges of traditional resources. So really those resources that form the foundation of most research, from books to journals to curated databases, digital collections. These are often selected with direct input from faculty, from teaching faculty, faculty across disciplines outside of the library. And don't forget that a lot of times librarians are working on accreditation work as well on these committees as part of the accreditation process to make sure that the library's collections are meeting those program standards. So taking the time to explore what's available, whether through your website up on the library page, whether through a quick conversation with your librarian, can really uncover those materials that directly will support and strengthen your work. And then I'm now going to kick it over to Jesus.
Yes. Before moving into partner with librarians, I also just wanted to mention on the finding books and resources, anything we don't have, we have a variety of ways to get you access to any material. So we have departments called Interlibrary Loan, who will actually borrow books and materials from other libraries across the country, even internationally, to get you access to those resources. And we also have a variety of ways for faculty and staff to recommend purchases, whether it's journals, whether it's books, whatever it is that you need. We will do our best to try to get you access to it, even if it's something we don't already own or have access to. So as much as we love to talk about all the services that we have access to within the library. One other thing that we love to highlight as well is opportunities to partner with the library and with librarians at your institutions. And we have a lot of opportunities that we try to promote to encourage those partnerships and collaborations. So one of these is focusing on a lot of the teaching that the library does. We partner with faculty to deliver instruction, primarily focusing on information literacy, but really going through a lot of the stages of the research process. So faculty, professors will bring in their classes for a library workshop, getting students started with going into databases, going into our library search, identifying research topics, trying to find those sources for their assignments. And we try to be collaborative in these processes as well, working with faculty to either co-teach or to co-develop a lesson plan that best meets the needs of students. And these can be one-time engagements. These could be, across the span of a semester or a quarter. And we also love to include online resources as well. So working with modules, working with other asynchronous tools to engage students in kind of a deeper lasting engagement than like a one-shot session. So along those lines, we also provide access to tons of toolkits and resources for instructors to include into their courses. So at least at University of Michigan, we have a set of modules called the DIY Library Toolkit that are available to all faculty and instructors to include into their courses in whatever way they see fit. These are fully customizable as well. So edits and changes can be made. We also will work with faculty to create new content, whether it's a research guide or modules that can be incorporated into classes as well. Additionally, we also love collaborating. We feel that we're highly collaborative, both within the library across campus. So always, I think, welcoming opportunities to help with the research process and even finding opportunities to co-author, co-present with faculty partners. This is something that we, I think, love doing, especially in our health sciences department. All the librarians there co-author on systematic reviews and things like that as well. But this is, again, something that I think folks don't always know that is an opportunity. But a lot of, especially our subject librarians, are already publishing and creating and working in their like specific disciplines on top of the work that they're doing in the library. So these are oftentimes really great opportunities to collaborate. And I've seen a lot of examples of relationships where a librarian will come in for to help with a few instruction sessions, and then there will be some overlap in the research interest of the faculty member and the librarian. And sometimes that can lead to some of these collaborations that end up in publications or presentations, et cetera. Another amazing way to partner is to actually collaborate in terms of like our spaces and events within the library. We're always super excited to host faculty members and folks on campus to present. It could be their work, it could be working with our special collections librarians to curate an exhibit, it could be a talk or a lecture. Really, any of these types of events are super exciting for us to collaborate and work with because I think a lot of our work is trying to build that engagement to bring people into our spaces and kind of undo the notions of libraries just being quiet places to study. We really want our spaces to be active and engaging. And I think our programming and events is a big way that we try to do that. And collaborating with the work that's already happening on campus is also, I think, something that we look forward to as well. And we're excited to work with faculty to make these opportunities happen. And it can be from something as kind of like intense as like workshops that are delivered at the library to something that's maybe just more of a for fun event or something that's more just like sharing art or things like that. We love partnering with the campus on any of these engagements and activities.
Yeah, and just
Um,
to, oh, sorry, Jesus.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to that, that as Jesus was saying, this is collaborative, but it can also be a way for you to start getting into publishing or presenting with someone who has quite a bit of experience and knowledge of it as well. So if you are newer coming into an academic institution and you are wanting to start building out your CV and putting together your packet or portfolio, this is something that a lot of times people don't realize. Librarians are a really great gold mine for creating those opportunities. And just to give a couple of examples of what that can look like, for one course that I was teaching on imposter syndrome, I co-developed that with another faculty member that was not in the library. And then we were asked to extend that out to presenting at different conferences across the state as well. And so that newer faculty member was able to very quickly leverage a course that we co-developed that was, nothing too intense or major, and create those opportunities for their CV, as well as, of course, getting that information out to even more people. We've also done work, myself included, where we build exhibits with faculty members. And again, this can be part of your service for your packet or your portfolio. Um, but it's also really telling because librarians oftentimes will have to be very familiar with internal policies and with the kind of initiatives that are important across the campus. Because again, we're making sure the collections are matching those needs, that the workshops are matching those needs. And so, an example of something that I once did with a faculty member was we had an inaugural year at an institution I was working at. And there was quite a large ask for different departments to be involved in a theme. And the faculty, a lot of our faculty were concerned about they didn't know how they were going to meet this. And so I started creating exhibits with the faculty that spoke to that theme, and then therefore also helped them to show how they were meeting the need of the theme for that inaugural year, coming from the president of the school. And so just thinking about things like that, and how it's not just a matter of we can help you find things, we can collaborate and be that resource as well to help you start to build out your portfolio.
And then I'll just jump in really quickly to wrap up this section. So a lot of the conversation we've been having so far is tied to the academic library, but I had my start in public library, so of course I have to give a plug to that space. So for those of you joining us today that might not be affiliated with a university or a research institution, you still have options. Many public libraries now provide access to online databases, research guides, interlibrary loan, as Jesus mentioned, and often have librarians with subject expertise who can help you get started. So you might also look into special libraries that are connected to government agencies, nonprofits, professional associations. A lot of times those types of libraries will make their collections available to independent scholars. And these partnerships are going to give you access to specialized material, to specialized services, to archival content, all of those resources that are really going to enrich your research. And on top of the access to the content, you also have that expert guidance to keep your research moving forward.
And just to also really quickly add to that, as Rhonda was saying, while there are public librarians, keep in mind too that your academic librarians a lot of times also know about those public resources or will send you to those resources. I myself worked in New York City for quite a long time, and I was constantly referring people at my academic institution to the New York Public Library for specialized services that I knew that they had on offer. So again, thinking outside of just academic, but also understanding that there's a world of resources outside of academic, even if you're at an academic institution. Okay. So now we're going to kind of talk about how we can also assist with upscaling your own learning as opposed to, necessarily not always that collaborative approach. But if you are looking to kind of understand how you can build out different skills that you're looking to expand on. So, first and foremost, as we've talked about some already, the library is going to have proprietary resources, software, and learning platforms. And so, something that I think is really important to understand is that, yes, this includes books and journals, and pretty much every library will have some sort of proprietary software as well. And so, what I mean by proprietary software, it's going to look different at different libraries, but this can include things like Adobe, SPSS, GIS, citation management tools, and that includes ones that are free, like Zotero, where even though it is free, the library is probably going to offer support for it, and usually will have it downloaded on all the library computers. But it will also include proprietary ones like EndNote and RefWorks. So again, it's important to understand what is on offer from your library in order to help you to begin building out what you need to keep track of your research and conduct really efficient and thorough research as well. Again, librarian here, I always put a plug in for any citation management software. If you haven't started using it, it's a great idea. So keeping in mind that these are the types of things librarians are thinking about, not just how do we get that book in your hand, but how do we make sure you have the resources you need to match the research demands of our institution? Um, I do want to say, I listed quite a few resources, SPSS, GIS. I've had to teach classes on every single one of those softwares, Adobe, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind is that not only will your library have them on offer, but a lot of times they will be offering support services for them as well, like workshops and continuing education. Additionally, many libraries will have learning platforms like Sage Campus, which is online courses that you can take on your own time. And so that's another thing to be on the lookout for. In Sage Campus, for instance, we have courses on how to get published, ethical research, how to use SPSS, right? So these are all different ways for you to learn on your own time in an asynchronous environment. And I'm going to let Rhonda speak a little bit more about that. I got a little excited.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Colleen, you covered the bulk of what I wanted to say, but essentially kind of taking it a step higher, just above a Sage resource, which we can talk
Mhm.
about, a little bit more in depth if we have time. But essentially, just I'm glad the reminder, right? Like, so all of these resources and tools and services that you're talking about, Colleen, and remember that all of those are not just for students, right? They're there for you too. And they're for, and if you, like Colleen mentioned, if you don't know how to use statistical software analysis tools, there are very likely resources or classes or other types of help that your librarians can provide for you. They're really there for anybody who wants to build those skill sets and strengthen their research skills. And, the example Colleen shared, because we're so close to it right now, working for Sage, is a resource like Sage Campus, which is, again, that collection of self-paced online courses, talking about data literacy, talking about research design, talking about cleaning messy data. If your library staff does not have, and your librarians that you're working with do not have maybe a course, right, that they're doing live, there's likely some sort of asynchronous, as Colleen mentioned, or other types of documentation or help or workshop that they will provide to help you upskill and get those core research skills really honed before you dig into your research study and your research project. So I'll just underscore what Colleen said by just saying, remember, whether you're looking to sharpen your data analysis skills, explore new methods, brush up on writing for publication, a great way to keep learning is to explore what your library has and just kind of remember that you have access to a wealth of resources directly to upskill your own processes through the libraries that you're working with and connected to.
Yeah. Thanks, Rhonda. And also to keep in mind too, we talked some about how we'll have workshops and courses through the library that help support utilizing those softwares. But I think it's also integral to your success as a researcher to understand that it's not just quote unquote trainings on how to use these tools that libraries offer. There are also courses on IRB. There are courses that can count towards continuing medical education as well. There's courses on data storage and management, GIS. So, once more, just really wanting to emphasize to expand out and start searching for what you might be needing to see if your library offers it. Because I've heard so many times from either students in their last year at the institution I worked at, or maybe a faculty member who's about to leave. I didn't know we had this. I wish I had known we had this. And the issue isn't that we don't want you to know, it's that there's a lot of resources to be educating people on. And so make sure that if you're not sure if your library supports GIS or supports IRB, check out their website and see what they have to say about that, or ask your librarian. And then, Jesus, would you like to talk about career services?
Yes. And first, I'd just like to add that oftentimes a lot of these like workshops and resources work in kind of conjunction with each other. So we'll have these like like one time or like follow-up workshops, but we will give you access to, it could be like the research guide, it could be like specific resources, databases, Sage Campus, for example, that will kind of go into some of those resources further. And of course, we always try to make ourselves available for consultations to maybe troubleshoot a specific question or problem more in depth in a one-on-one setting as well. So think of all these different types of resources as kind of all working alongside each other to provide you the access and resources that you need. In terms of career services, I'll just kind of highlight a few specific opportunities or projects that we've done within the library to kind of help with these areas as well. So we have a yearly Digital Research Institute focused around anti-racism, which is a grant to support project and research work from our faculty members. And we kind of provide these more intensive labs over the summer to help faculty that have been accepted into the Institute on taking an idea or a question, developing it into a proposal or project plan, and working through that over the Summer Institute. And this is a grant as well, so we provide that funding and support and structure to really kind of help accomplish these projects and make them happen. We offer opportunities on working with and finding international data. We have done travel grants to visit our collections for research. So these we offer to faculty across the country who are doing research, and will provide the resources to come to our spaces, access our collections to kind of help support that research as well. We've done grants to support open access, to support publishing within open access. So a lot of these are really kind of helping to further our faculty members' kind of careers and impact and output within the institution. So these are all kind of services that we are happy to provide. I feel like we always try to do a better and better job of marketing them as well to our faculty members in hopes of kind of creating and maintaining a lot of those partnerships. And lastly, I'll just say like any questions on how we can support and even ideas for like things that we can do, we always welcome from our faculty as well. So hopefully being able to kind of build those relationships that if there's things that we don't have or like career or research support that you think would be useful for the library to provide, having that conversation, and we often will look for ways to make that happen. So it might not always be like a for sure yes, but we will always take any of those questions and consider what are ways that we can make that happen, or like what already exists, or how can we connect some of these resources to provide that support as much as possible. So kind of going back to that reducing barriers, like that, for me, like that it is like the main takeaway and like one of the main pieces of my work is making sure all students, staff, faculty members just know that that is a big reason of why we're here for. And we love kind of pondering those questions that come to us and like pondering through what are the best ways to connect those resources or services to the folks that are coming to us with those questions. So I would always just say like never hesitate to get in touch and to ask what your questions are, what you think would be like we can best do to help support the work and the research that's already happening. And we're more than happy to answer those questions, continue building those partnerships. And yeah, that's what we're here for as the library. But yeah, with that, I'll hand it off to Sean.
Well, and just
Oh,
really quickly, no, Jesus, you're going right the right way, but I wanted to say too really quickly that Jesus gave a lot of examples of how we as librarians can partner with career services and that's not just for the students. And we've talked a lot today about very intricate research demands and publishing demands. But something I also like to make clear is that your librarians are also thinking about research holistically a lot of the time. And so, what I mean by that is, for me especially, I wanted to make sure researchers understood part of research is having good wellness practices, taking breaks, making sure you're pacing yourself, things like that. And so, those are other types of resources and trainings that your library will partner with career services for a lot of the time as well. And so, again, just saying, thinking outside the box a little bit with what you might think is in the library, because, examples of some workshops I offered were bullet journaling, because that is something that researchers oftentimes benefit from when they need an organization schema. So, things that you might not think about, again, keep an eye out for them or ask. And so then moving on to our last point before we hand it off to Sean. The main thing we wanted to make sure we ended on here today is to keep in mind that your library might offer specialized services or even be a special, quote unquote, special library. And so, what I mean by that is that there are health sciences libraries, there are business libraries, there's even branches of public libraries that are dedicated to business and career. There's archives, there's zine libraries, there's even sewing libraries. And so it's a very good idea for any researcher or anyone interested in publishing to explore what types of libraries you have access to and what services are offered at each of those libraries. So, for instance, I worked at a health sciences library for most of my career, and we actually had systematic review services where we would assist and be a part of the systematic review. And again, something that's important to keep in mind with that service, we had to be listed as co-authors because we were doing the amount of work required to be listed as a co-author. But we also had other things like sports equipment and medical models that you could check out. And so again, thinking about what could that special library have for me? Many archives will have special digital collections, but it's important to keep in mind that these also still have requirements if you want to utilize any of those images or resources in your own publications. I have literally worked with researchers who I have partnered with a textile library to help them research the history of the textiles business in New York City. And so, again, there's so many different libraries out there. Many public libraries are great for historical and genealogy services. And they have a gold mine of geographical surveys from the past however 100 years your state or territory has been in existence. And so, the thing we really want to make sure you understand as we close out is that we are not the voice of your library. Your greatest resource is going to be going back to your library specifically. We are giving examples and understanding of the different types of things your library might be able to do, but it's important to understand your library is going to be where you can actually get that information, ask those in-depth questions about the supports they have. And just know, sometimes items and resources are hard to find, and it's not because the librarians aren't trying to make them discoverable. As Jesus mentioned, we have been doing quite a bit of work to try and market our resources. There are even marketing librarians. But it's just that there are so many resources that many libraries have. And so I think someone dropped in the chat earlier, we don't know what we don't know, and that is so true. So if you don't know, just ask. I always would tell anyone who would come up to me, I'm sure everyone in this room might be guilty of doing this. You go up to a librarian and you say, I don't want to bother you, and I would always say I would be in the wrong profession if I thought someone asking me a question was bothering me. And that is how every librarian feels. So I want to kick it back to Sean really quickly to wrap us up.
Thank you very much. We're going to get into our Q&A in a moment, so do continue to send all of your questions through on the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Before we wrap up, though, I would like to note some upcoming webinars we've got. So in November, we have a webinar on registered reports for anyone who's interested in learning how to write and review a registered report. And then for anybody looking to get started in peer review, or to potentially get more training in peer review. October 22nd is our next How to Be a Peer Reviewer webinar. So it's a good space for anyone who's never done it before, who was looking for the basics, and also potentially for those who have done it before but are looking to hone their skills a little bit more. Noting that we have an entire website dedicated for resources for our authors, support information here. So if you've got any questions about publishing a journal article, this is a great space to come to first. I'll keep this on the screen now. We have an author newsletter that goes out quarterly, and it will include the latest information about upcoming webinars, latest resources and guides, and some tips for you. So if anyone's interested, feel free to sign up for it, and you'll receive the first email in it at some point in December. So now, diving into some of the questions that have been sent over, there was a question here that was asking, essentially, are the services that were discussed today free to individuals and institutions, or does the end user need to pay something for these?
That's a great question, and I'm so excited we can clarify that because that is also a question we get a lot from students as well. So it's good to understand that if you are working with an academic library, the majority of the time that library will require that you have an affiliation to that institution. I want to say, though, that all of these services are free. So whether you're working with a public library, and so it's free because you are a citizen of that county, or you are working with an academic librarian and it's free because you are affiliated with the institution. So all of these services are going to be free through one of those avenues. I do want to say, though, that even though at an academic institution, you do usually need to be affiliated to take advantage of these services, as Jesus mentioned, a lot of libraries do have different avenues to gain access if you are a researcher who needs to get to that collection. And so Jesus mentioned some of the offerings they have at University of Michigan. I know at some of the libraries I've worked at, you could even buy a year pass, and that would include access to reference and consultation services. And there are also different passes for different states where it will say, I need access to something that only your library has. And so that would allow you access to that academic institution to get access to those materials. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
I'll just add, oftentimes, at least at I've only worked at public institutions, but at every library I've worked at, all of our spaces are open to the public. So even if you're not affiliated, you can come into our computer labs and those will have all access to anything that we have. We just wouldn't be able to provide remote access to our databases and journals, but a lot of our public libraries, our public university libraries do provide access to the public if you're in the library physically.
And it can be intimidating. I know you sometimes you don't want to just walk into a library and say, "Can I come in or not?" So again, keep in mind websites calling the library, they will tell you who has access, who is seen as an affiliate. So if that's something, I know myself, like I still sometimes feel anxiety going, and I've been a librarian for over 20 years. So if you are feeling that way, just know you can ask in other ways besides going into the library.
Good to know. Great tips. I think that's really answering a lot of the questions that are coming through here. Um, got another one here. I think it's very interesting. So we're talking a lot about helping people who are potentially working at an institution or studying there. What happens after you graduate? How can you work back with the institution? Is there any connection that you can have or any support you have with the library post-graduation?
Another great question. Of course, I'm going to jump in because I was a student success librarian for so long. But yeah, so just to say that, again, this kind of does trickle into the last question we answered, which is that a lot of institutions will have different types of passes or access that is granted to independent researchers. So you don't necessarily have to be affiliated with the institution to gain access to those collections. Your support services might look different as an independent researcher. So it might be that, yes, you could ask questions at the reference desk, but we might not be able to necessarily give you access to, a toolkit or something of teaching materials, right? So there's just different navigation that happens when you're an independent researcher. But I think this really goes back to Jesus's quote that really librarians want to break down access. I don't think I've ever met a librarian who understands how to say the word no very well. We want to help, we want to assist. And so, even if you're an independent researcher, and some of us have been independent researchers ourselves at different points in our careers, we're going to try and help to get you to the resources you need. And again, public libraries are amazing too. They will have a lot of resources that are very useful for independent researchers. Rhonda or Jesus, if you want to add to that.
I guess I would just add, definitely scroll through your library's research guides as well. Oftentimes, some of those will be organized based on what resources require institutional access and which ones are available and free to the public. So we'll kind of organize those as well. So definitely look through those because oftentimes they will designate which of those resources you don't need any access. And the only thing I'll add is a lot of institutions also will offer access to alums, either if they're affiliated through the Alumni Association or a specific just level of access just for alums. It might not be the full access, but it is something that's offered at a lot of institutions.
Great. Thank you very much. Now kind of actually switching gears away from postgrads, looking at undergrads. So a really good question coming in here from Rushika. Wants to know what advice you'd give to an undergraduate student who's just starting to explore research. How can somebody take advantage of institutional library resources that are most relevant to them? And what tips do you have for them to find ideas on how to get started?
I would start off by seeing what kind of research opportunities there are on campus. So at least at my institution, we have one called the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program, or UROP. It's specifically focused on introducing undergraduate students to research, and they apply for the program and get matched into a research project that they also receive course credit for. I think oftentimes it does result in presentations or publications as well. But something like that will give that structure and support for early or first-time researchers. Aside from that, I think reaching out to faculty who are teaching or doing research in areas that you're interested in or have questions about, they might know of those more discipline-specific opportunities as well. And then I would also encourage folks to see what job opportunities there are at the library, because oftentimes we do hire for specific research projects or different things like that that do end up resulting in kind of a research experience as well. And I'm sure Colleen also has a variety of opportunities that she's worked with.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to add to that. Jesus and I have actually had students as co-authors on quite some of our collaborative publications and journals as well. So again, just reiterating, ask, say if you're interested in an opportunity. Mention to that librarian, that other faculty member, I really enjoyed X, Y, and Z that we talked about today. If there's ever an opportunity to be involved in research, I would love to. But I think one thing that's really hard when you're starting out in academia, and I think Jesus and I can both relate to this as first gen students who went into student success because we were first gen students. It can be intimidating, but you as a student have so much to say and you have so much to offer. So we want you to want to collaborate with us, okay? So I know it can be scary, but most of us want to hear your voice, and we would love you to ask those questions.
That's very nice advice. Thank you for that. Actually, another piece here. We've actually started talking about this one already. But I'm wondering if there's anything further to say. What advice do you give to students who want to start publishing? I think the question you've already answered. Ask, reach out, connect, be part of the conversation. I think that's really nice.
I would also add to that, though, connecting, but also getting on listservs. Rhonda mentioned earlier, different societies. So those are also opportunities. It's not just leveraging your library. As When I was in my first year of my master's degree, I joined a specific society for the focus I was doing in my degree, and I was able to get a couple of publications and start leading some collaborative groups from that. So there will be calls out on listservs. There will be, those different events that you can go to and meet people and network and build networking off of values too. A lot of times when people hear the word networking, they tend to think it's a little dirty, but it's really about finding people that share that interest and those values with you and expanding on that within that academic and research opportunity.
That's great. Thank you. Um, a good question just came through, and I'm not sure if it's something we can address live today. It's a question about funding and potentially for international students or people who are looking to do research internationally. I know we've talked a lot about public libraries, which is more local, or potentially more local. Do you have any guidance here or any thoughts for people? We can see from across our attendee pool today, we got people from all over the world. So any thoughts on potentially working with libraries that might be global, or are there any tips here for this?
I feel like I'm always talking so much, but I will say, a lot of these libraries are also themselves global, or they might work with global colleagues. So, for instance, I used to work at NYU. That's a global institution. So I was consistently working with colleagues in Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, etc. So keeping in mind that it might not just be funding opportunities, you might already have built in some resources to make those connections on a global scale. That isn't just about gaining that funding. But in line with that, again, a lot of these libraries are going to have kind of knowledge of how to find the opportunities for funding. And so that will include, you can say, I'm specifically looking to fund a research project in X, Y, and Z. As long as you are clear on what you're looking for, that's something librarians can definitely assist with, is finding those specific opportunities for you.
And oftentimes finding what opportunities are available at the institutions in the locations that you're interested in traveling to for research. So for example, the University of Michigan, one of our bigger grants is through our Asia Library. We have a huge, vast collection of East and Southeast Asian library in our library of those materials. So we have researchers from across the country and even across the world who travel to come in and get access to those resources. So that's a grant that we provide. So if there's folks that are interested in using those collections, they can see that that opportunity is available through the University of Michigan, and can apply for it. So if there's a specific location or research interest or even collection specifically that you're interested in, seeing if that program or that institution maybe already has a grant or if they know of opportunities, because if it's something that a lot of people travel to, they might already know of maybe specific programs or grant programs that will provide some of that support.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we've actually come to the end of our conversation today. We've got lots of good questions here, and I think Jessica's done a really great job of responding to a lot of questions too. So first, I want to thank everybody for attending today. We really appreciate you taking the time to hear from us. A huge thank you to our speakers, to Rhonda, Colleen, and Jesus for your expert insights. I hope to see everybody in a future webinar, but in the meantime, please do take care. Thank you.